So now welcome you all for my fourth section of my talk, or rather I could say final segment of my talk. Here I will cover the lifestyle factors that causing cancer. Okay, so let's start with. First, I will cover, I'll just let you know what are those lifestyle factors. Those factors are our diet, exercise, and being overweight are how to play a major role in the trends for breast in case of women and prostate in case of male cancer. Okay, so recently the rapid rise in the rate of colorectal cancer in Japan and China suggests an environmental cause such as lifestyle factors plays very important role. Different environmental exposures like tobacco, alcohol, chemical, food additives, what we call medical drugs, etc., are linked to a specific kind of cancer. Okay, so let's talk first about food and nutrition. The dietary factors have been associated with 30% of cancers in Western countries. In fact, making diet is a second factor after tobacco as a preventable cause of the cancer. Okay, so the effects diet on cancer risk in developing countries has been considered around 20%. So it means lesser than the Western world. On the other hand, in the processed meat products like sauces, color additives, like cinnamyl, what we call the anthranilate and thiourea nitrate are used despite of increasing risk of liver and bowel cancer by 21%. Imagine, still carries. Unfortunately, an excess of consumption of sugar and salt also causes obesity and higher risk of cancer. Besides, aflatoxin, which are found in groundnuts, pulses, oil seeds, and grains, are reported to increase the risk of hepatocellular carcinoma. I will discuss a little bit more about in upcoming next slide about the aflatoxins. It's very important, people should know about it. Okay. Now, a little bit about obesity. You can see here in the graph, being overweight or obese appear to be one of the most important modifiable cause of cancer. After tobacco, large population study shows a consistent association between obesity and certain kind of cancer. Okay, so the biomass index, you can see in the chart, index chart represents that individual in the overweight or obese category have greater risk than those in the healthy weight categories for many diseases, including certain cancers. Not only cancer, obesity will lead to many other diseases also. Okay, so inactivity and obesity account for 25 to 30% of cases of several major cancers, including colon cancer, breast cancer, but in that case, breast cancer after postmenopausal condition, endometrial cancer, kidney cancer, and cancer of the esophagus. Okay, so I continue with the obesity. Obesity confers an increased risk of several malignancies. Okay, reduction in the rate of obesity should result in decreased incidence of cancer and potentially mortality. So First, let's talk about male. In men, obesity-associated cancers includes esophageal, colon, liver, pancreas, and prostate. Whereas in case of women, obesity-associated cancers includes endometrial, gallbladder, breast cancer, as well as pancreas and colon cancer. Okay, so whether male or female, now talk about it about if you talk about tobacco exposure. So if there is tobacco exposure, then what is happening? So tobacco products are carcinogenic, we all know. Its smoke has at least 70 chemicals that cause cancer. You know, every time you breathe in that smoke, those chemicals get into your bloodstream, which carries the chemical to all parts of our body. Many of these chemicals can damage your DNA, which control how your body makes new cells and direct each kind of cells to do what it is made for. So damaged DNA can make cells grow differently from how they are supposed to do. Okay, so these unusual cells can turn into cancer basically. And if you were asked to describe the relationship between tobacco smoking and cancer, you might immediately think of lung cancer. Yes, it's true that smoking tobacco products causes almost 9 of every 10 cases of the lung cancer, but smoking can cause cancer almost, mind it, almost anywhere in your body. Lung cancer is the main, but it doesn't mean only lung cancer. Smoking can cause cancer anywhere in our body. Okay, so next is medical drugs. It's fair question that what has alcohol got to do with cancer, especially the people who used to drink every day. To be very specific, alcohol increases the risk of 7 types of cancer. Forget about one type, including some of the most common, such as mouth and throat, okay, breast, liver, bowel, okay, and others also. So not everyone who drink alcohol develop cancer, but on whole, some cancers are very common in people who drink alcohol, because sometimes people give logic. Look, that person is taking everyday alcoholic drink every day, but he does not have any problems. So you give very common example in society and start justify your bad habits. It's not good. Okay, so it's shown in the figure that alcohol is associated with 7 types of cancer associated with alcohol. I have discussed in previous slides each and every person's immune systems, your genetic makeup is different, therefore about the infection or development of cancer. Okay, so just few slides before I was talking about some of the toxins or the continue with the first about the drugs, that some drugs that used to treat cancer, such as cyclophosphamide, very common, chlorambucil, melphalan, has been shown to increase the occurrence of second cancers, including leukemia. Others that are used as immunosuppressants, such as cyclosporin and azathioprine for the patients having organ transplant, also are associated with the increased cancer risk, especially lymphoma. However, FDA has determined that life-saving benefits of these drugs overweigh the additional cancer risk years later. Okay, so it is recommended that people weigh the risk and benefits concerning the use of drug with the help of physician or other healthcare specialists. Okay, so some medicines have been linked to reduced risk of cancers. Okay, now I was talking about just a few slides before uh, aflatoxin. Aflatoxin are cancer causing substances produced by certain type of fungi growing on food. Grains and peanuts are the most common foods on which these fungi grows. Meat, eggs and milk from animals that eat aflatoxin contaminated feeds are other source of exposure. Agricultural workers are potentially at risk if they inhale contaminated airborne grain dust. Exposure to high level of aflatoxin increases the risk of liver cancer. Okay, so usually you will see when you visit outside India, specifically, it's uh, my personal experience. When you visit Australia or Germany or USA, the peanuts are screened for aflatoxin in most of the countries, including United States, before the processing. But the risk of aflatoxin exposure is higher in developing countries like India, where there is no screening for the fungus happening. Okay, now what are the some ways to reduce the risk of developing cancer? So at least two-thirds of cases of cancer are caused by environmental factors. Many of these cancers are linked to lifestyle factors. In addition to the lifestyle choices, precautions can be taken in the home and at workplace to reduce exposure to other harmful exposures by avoiding high calories or high fat food. You can avoid cigarette or tobacco or alcohol. You can avoid extreme sunlight, or by avoiding viral or bacterial infections. You have to take proper precaution. Avoiding contact with the pesticides, and also by avoiding repeated medical imaging. That will also help us to reduce the risk of developing cancer. Okay. In fact, it is also good that if we if you are able to detect this cancer at early stage. Okay, so sometimes exposure to toxic substance cannot be avoided. So certain diagnostic procedures and appropriate screening will not reduce the exposure to substance in environment, but may detect cancer at an early stage before they spread to other part of the body. And it is advised to get this screening test on a regular basis. Or in other way, if you are able to detect cancer at tumor stage, small tumor stage, it is very easily curable. So before reaching to the malignant state, with the help of this diagnostic procedures, we can reduce the risk of or danger of this deadly disease. Mammogram, an X-ray of the breast is the best method of finding breast cancer before symptoms appears. Mammography screening is advised, everyone to 2 years after age of 40s. Another important test, even now in metropolitan, I have some of the data that yes, these gynecologists always recommend for the PEP test or PEP smear is the most successful screening tools so far used to screen for the cancer for the cervix. Many doctors recommended yearly PEP tests. A number of screening tests are used to find colon and rectal cancer as well. Over the age of 50s, the fecal occult blood test, a sigmoidoscopy, a colonoscopy is suggested every year if some person have this kind of problems. So cancer may cause a variety of symptoms and changes in body like thickening or lump in any part of our body, obvious change in in a wart or mole, a sore throat does not heal quickly, nagging cough, changes in bowel or bladder habits, unexplained changes in weight, or unusual bleeding or discharge. Okay, now we must know what factors do scientists consider in determining the risk associated with different cancer causing substances. Okay, so exposure to some substances are associated with high risk for getting cancer, while exposure to other substances carry very little risk. Okay, so it is important to know that just being exposed to a chemical agent does not mean that you will get cancer. Risk assessment is the term used to determine the relationship between exposure to a substance and the likelihood of developing disease from the exposure. Okay, so a term called potency. So potency is a measure of capacity of a given amount of substance to cause cancer. Okay, now the type of exposure. Public health agencies classify substances as known or suspected human carcinogens based on evidence of the cancer from at least one type of exposure, such as single, workplace, and continuous exposure. Okay, now dose response. It is important to know whether the cancer risk increases as the exposure level increases. This is known as dose response trend. Factors such as age, gender, general health, state of the immune system, smoking history, your diet, childhood exposures, and the pattern of genetic alterations may play a role in susceptibility. So a chemical may be harmless unless a person has one or more factor that allows the chemical to be changed in body to a more hazardous form. Okay, so now the last slide I could say, how do this public health official set acceptable exposure level for the environmental chemicals. So just let it be one by one. So linear dose response. One of the first consideration by the regulatory agency is to determine whether a carcinogen exhibits linear or threshold like dose response behavior. This means it is assumed that any exposure, no matter how small, would have some risk. Second, threshold like dose response. In the case of the carcinogen exhibiting threshold like dose responses, other factors such as age, gender, genetic makeups, and diet are taken into the consideration. Okay, and the third point, risk versus benefits. That is very important. Another factors adding to the difficulty of regulating the exposure to these environmental chemicals is that many substances that may cause cancer in people or people also have some benefits. So pharmaceuticals represents the best example of when benefit or risk analysis are routinely conducted. So let's conclude today's discussion. The previous slides highlights
the lifestyle factors that are also the major risk factor for cancer. This also brings us to a very important question. Can changes in our lifestyle impact our risk of developing cancer? A direct answer would be yes. Cancer is a preventable disease, but it requires major lifestyle changes. How can we do it? Very simple. Stop smoking, increase our ingestion of fruits and vegetables, consume moderate level of alcohol, restrict our calorie intake, do regular exercise, avoid long and direct exposure to sunlight, minimize meat consumption, use whole grains in our diet, take the prescribed vaccinations and regular checkups. Now, thank you so much all the participants for your patiently participate in this discussion and lecture. I will fail my duty if I will not acknowledge my mentor, my collaborator, and my students, because whatever things I am doing and achieve in the field of research, all credit goes to them. And also my sincere thanks for giving me an opportunity to interact with you and deliver talk in this faculty development program organized by Ramanujan College Teaching Learning Center. Thank you so much.